What would you do if the person you trusted most gave you a gift with a smile only to stab you in the back the moment you looked away? Hi, my name is Linda. I'm 66 years old, and this is the story of how my daughter gave me the perfect Mother's Day gift so she could sell my house behind my back. The house where she was born, the home I built from scratch, and the place she decided didn't belong to me anymore. Before we begin, if you enjoy true life stories about betrayal, family drama, and shocking twists, please hit the subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's go back to the beginning. It was early May, and I remember the garden being in full bloom. Tulips, roses, azaleas of every color you can imagine. My hands were dirty with soil. My back was sore, but my heart was full. I loved that garden more than anything. It was my sanctuary. I'd been living alone for the last 10 years, ever since my husband Mark passed away. We were married 38 years. He built the deck, I picked the paint for the shutters. Every inch of that house had a memory nailed into it. My daughter Heather used to call it the fairy house. She grew up playing hide and seek behind the hedges, learning to ride her bike in the driveway, and baking cookies with me every Christmas in that creaky old kitchen. But things had changed. Heather lived in the city now, 2 hours away. She'd gotten married, had 2 kids, and worked full-time as a financial advisor. We talked maybe once a week, sometimes less. I understood. Life gets busy. So when she showed up on my doorstep the Friday before Mother's Day, holding a bouquet of peonies and a shiny white envelope, I was floored. "Happy early Mother's Day," she said, giving me a big smile. She looked tired, bags under her eyes, hair pulled up in a bun like she hadn't had time to brush it. Still, it meant the world that she was there. I invited her in, made some tea, and we sat on the porch watching the birds fight over the feeder. She handed me the envelope and said, "You deserve a break, Mom. You've been working in this house nonstop. It's time you let someone take care of you for once." Inside the envelope was a printed voucher, 3 days, 2 nights at a spa resort in the mountains, full massage package, facial, meals included. "I used my rewards points," she said. "You don't have to spend a dime, just relax." I was touched, truly. It had been so long since anyone did something like that for me. I tried to protest, but who's going to feed the cat? What if the pipes act up again? But Heather had answers for everything. "I'll take care of it, Mom. I'll come back and check on the house. You go." The plan was simple. I'd leave Friday morning, be back Sunday night. A weekend of pampering, courtesy of my thoughtful daughter. At least, that's what I believed. I packed a small bag, gave Heather the keys, kissed her on the cheek, and left that Friday with a smile. I had no idea that by the time I returned, everything I thought I could trust would be gone. The spa was nice, quiet, a little too quiet, if I'm honest. I wasn't used to all that stillness, no creaky floors, no neighbor's dog barking, just the sound of wind chimes and a woman named Serenity trying to sell me herbal foot wraps. I should have been relaxed, but something kept tugging at me. Maybe it was just the odd timing of it all, Heather showing up out of nowhere with a fully booked spa weekend, all planned out and paid for. I hadn't even mentioned needing a break. Still, I tried to enjoy it. I had my first facial in 15 years, soaked in a mineral tub, and even got a hot stone massage. But by Saturday evening, that uneasy feeling in my gut had settled into something heavier. I texted Heather, "Everything okay back home? How's Mr. Boots?" No reply. Hours passed. I called straight to voicemail. I tried to shake it off, told myself she probably had her hands full with the kids or maybe just forgot her charger, but something didn't sit right. On Sunday morning, I called again, then again. Still no answer. When I got home that afternoon, the first thing I noticed was the driveway. My trash bins weren't where I'd left them. They were lined up perfectly by the curb lid closed, wheels scrubbed clean. That wasn't like Heather. I stepped inside. The house smelled different, like lemon polish and something synthetic, almost sterile. And then I saw the boxes, neatly stacked by the living room wall, labeled in Heather's handwriting: guest room, books, garage, tools, kitchen, misc. My heart sank. I rushed through the house. My grandmother's china, gone. The crocheted blanket my husband gave me the year before he passed, missing. In the bedroom, the closet had been cleaned out, my off-season clothes packed into plastic tubs I didn't own. I called Heather again. My hand was shaking. Straight to voicemail. It didn't feel like she had tidied up. It felt like I had been moved out. Then I spotted a folder on the kitchen table: real estate paperwork, open house checklists, a printed flyer: charming suburban cottage, perfect for young families. My address was at the bottom. That's when I understood. This wasn't just a spring cleaning, this was an erasure. And I had no idea how deep it went yet. I stood in my own kitchen like a trespasser. The real estate folder felt heavy in my hands, though it probably didn't weigh more than a pound. But what it meant, that was the weight I couldn't carry. I flipped through the pages, scanning for answers, for something in it that would explain why my life had been boxed up like I'd died. Then I saw it. A listing agreement with my name on it, my signature, only it wasn't mine. I stared at it for what felt like hours. The loops on the L were too wide. The tail on the M didn't match how I wrote it. Whoever had signed this had tried to copy me, but they hadn't gotten it right. I felt dizzy. I sat down before my knees gave out. That's when the front door opened. Heather walked in like nothing was wrong, holding a canvas bag from Whole Foods and humming under her breath. She froze when she saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I held up the folder. "You want to answer that for me?" Her expression flickered, just for a second. Then she put the bag down and crossed her arms. "I was going to tell you," she said. "I just needed to make sure everything was in place first." "In place?" I echoed. "Heather, you forged my signature." She didn't deny it. Instead, she said, "It's not like you were using the space, Mom. The house is too big. You're rattling around in it by yourself, and you've said yourself the upkeep is getting hard." I blinked. "So your solution was to sell it while I was gone?" Her voice rose, defensive now. "It was for your own good. You've been saying you're tired, that the yard is too much, that your knees ache every time you go up the stairs. I found a condo near Ustwo bedrooms. No stairs, walking distance to the grandkids." I was speechless. She continued, rushing through her justification like a rehearsed script. "I took care of everything: the realtor, the staging, the legal paperwork. I even contacted your bank." That's when my stomach dropped. "The bank?" I asked slowly. She hesitated, then nodded. "I used the power of attorney you gave me back in 2020. Remember? During your surgery?" Yes, I remembered. A precaution, we said at the time. Temporary. But I never revoked it. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal, I was dealing with something that might actually be legal. "You had no right," I said, my voice low and shaking. "No right to do this without talking to me." She softened finally. "Mom, please. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted what was best." I looked around at the half-packed boxes at the empty walls, at the home I'd lived in for 35 years being dismantled piece by piece. What's best for you, Heather? Not me. She didn't say anything, just stood there silent. That was the moment I realized something chilling. She didn't think she'd done anything wrong. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid awake staring at the ceiling fan, the hum of it barely louder than the roar in my chest. Rage, betrayal, confusion. It all circled like a storm that refused to die down. First thing the next morning, I made a call to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a woman named Tara who had helped my friend Judy during her divorce. Judy called her a bulldog in heels. That sounded like exactly what I needed. I emailed her the listing documents, scans of the signature, and the power of attorney Heather had used. She called me back within the hour. Linda, she said, what your daughter did is morally appalling, but legally, it's going to be tricky. Tricky. I hated that word. Tara explained, yes, I had given Heather power of attorney during my surgery, but I'd never revoked it. That meant, technically, Heather had the right to act in my name. But she forged my signature, I insisted. She did, Tara agreed. But if she used her power of attorney for the sale, the forged signature might just be sloppy paperwork, not fraud. It made me sick. She didn't even tell me, I said. Isn't that enough to press charges? Tara paused. It's not criminal unless we can prove she did it for her own gain, say, pocketing money from the sale. Did she set up the new condo for you like she claimed? I hesitated. I hadn't even asked. I don't know. Then that's our first move, she said. Find out where the money's going. Because if she's shifting funds into her counter, if the condo's in her name, we have a case. Later that day, I drove to the condo Heather mentioned. It was cute. Quiet neighborhood, fresh siding, big windows, neat little porch. There was a for rent sign out front. I called the number. The unit had been purchased 2 weeks ago by a woman named Heather Whitaker. In cash. My last name. Her full name. I felt my chest tighten. The dots were connecting, and what they spelled out made me want to scream. Heather wasn't moving me into that condo. She was moving herself. That night, I met Tara in person and handed over every document I had, bank statements, emails, a copy of my original power of attorney. She looked through it all, then folded her hands. We can file for immediate revocation of the power of attorney, contest the sale, and freeze the funds in escrow. But Linda, this won't be easy. Your daughter might be family, but in this case, she's also your opponent. I nodded. I don't care how long it takes. I want my life back. Tara leaned in. Then we fight. When the court papers were finally served, I expected Heather to call me, to apologize, to explain, to scream, anything. But she didn't. Not a single call, not even a text, just silence. I knew she had received the documents because my lawyer confirmed the timestamp, so I waited. And waited. A week passed, then another. Nothing. Tara moved quickly. She filed for an emergency injunction to freeze the remaining proceeds from the house sale, what was left after the down payment on the condo. The judge approved it. That meant Heather couldn't touch the rest of the money. I imagined her logging into her bank account, expecting it to be there and seeing zeros instead. A small, guilty part of me felt satisfaction. But mostly, I felt grief. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. A mother and daughter are supposed to be allies, best friends. I raised Heather to be independent, yes, but never dishonest, and certainly never manipulative. Tara told me the next step would be mediation. The court wanted us to try resolving things outside of trial. When I showed up at the legal office, I didn't even recognize my daughter at first. She looked tired, thinner, eyes hardened. She wore a beige blazer that looked expensive and a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. She sat across from me at the long conference table, her lawyer beside her, mine next to me. No hugs, no hi, Mom. Just silence until the mediator began. Heather claimed she did what she thought was best for me, that I was aging, that the house was too big, that I'd told her many times I wanted to downsize, that she only stepped in when I wouldn't make a decision. Her lawyer nodded along like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. I couldn't stay quiet. You had no right, I said. You didn't talk to me. You didn't ask. You took. You sold my home and bought yourself a new place using my name, my money, and you didn't even tell me. Heather crossed her arms. You weren't going to do anything. You were just stuck, Mom, living in the past, holding on to a house you couldn't manage. Then help me manage it. Don't steal it from under me like I'm already dead. The mediator raised his hand. Let's keep it civil. But there was no civility left between us. Heather refused to transfer the condo into my name. She claimed she'd already invested too much in it, made design choices, settled in. I offered to buy it from her just to keep some peace. She declined. That's when I knew this wasn't about my well-being. It was about control. When mediation failed, Tara filed a motion to move forward to trial, and that terrified me. Court, judges, public hearings, my life, my family drama, dragged into legal records. But what choice did I have? Heather had crossed a line, one I couldn't unsee. As I walked out of the legal center that day, the air felt colder. My daughter-me only child was now a legal adversary, and I still had no idea how far she was willing to go. The days leading up to the court date were some of the loneliest of my life. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I'd sit at the kitchen table in the rental, staring at the same four walls, wondering how we ended up here. I thought about every birthday party I threw for Heather, every late night fever, every time I worked overtime just to buy her a prom dress or cover her car insurance when she was in college. How did that kind of love get repaid with betrayal? Tara was relentless in her preparation. She gathered bank records, text messages, even security camera footage from the spa showing my check-in and check-out times proof that I had no idea what was happening while I was away. She found the notary who signed the documents Heather used to authorize the sale and questioned the legitimacy of the signature. If that's not your handwriting, she said, holding up a blown-up image of the authorization form, we've got forgery. I stared at the page. It didn't look like my writing, but the signature was close enough to pass. Sloppy, rushed, but close. Tara narrowed her eyes. We'll get a handwriting analyst to verify, and if she forged that paper, she's not just a liar, she's a criminal. The word hung in the air, criminal. I didn't want Heather in jail. I didn't want her punished. I wanted her to admit what she did and fix it. That's all. But I knew now she wouldn't. Then came a knock at my door. Unexpected. It was Carol, my next-door neighbor from the old neighborhood. She held a folder in one hand and a Tupperware of chicken casserole in the other. I heard what happened, she said softly. I don't know all the details, but I thought this might help. Inside the folder were copies of conversations she'd printed from the local neighborhood Facebook group. One thread in particular caught my eye. Someone had posted photos of the nice young couple moving into Linda's old house the weekend I was away. A dozen comments followed praising how fast the house sold, how grateful the buyers were to Heather for making the deal happen so quickly. One comment even mentioned, didn't Linda just leave for a spa trip? That timing's wild. It was a timeline, a digital trail, evidence. Carol reached out and squeezed my hand. You don't deserve this. You were always good to her. I blinked back tears. Thank you. I didn't know anyone noticed. She smiled. We did. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift. Not relief, not hope, but something sturdier resolve. I wasn't going to back down. Not anymore. The next morning, Tara submitted the Facebook screenshots as supplementary evidence. She said they painted a picture of intent, of premeditation. Heather hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a plan. And the court was finally about to hear the truth. The courtroom was colder than I expected, both in temperature and in atmosphere. Heather sat at the opposite table, dressed in soft beige, her hair pulled into a neat ponytail, as if she were attending a PTA meeting. Not a legal hearing about whether or not she had deceived and dispossessed her own mother. She didn't look at me, not once. Her lawyer opened with a statement that made my jaw clench. Miss Langley, he said, acted with the best intentions. Her mother, Linda, had expressed on multiple occasions that the house had become too much for her to manage, that she felt overwhelmed maintaining it alone. My client merely facilitated a solution that served both parties. I nearly stood up, but Tara placed a hand on my arm. Wait, let it unfold. We've got this. And she did. When it was her turn, Tara stood with a quiet confidence that filled the room. Your Honor, this is not a case about misunderstandings or miscommunications. It's a case about a daughter using forged documents to execute the sale of her mother's home while deliberately sending her out of town. The sale happened the same day Linda left. The buyers moved in before she returned. That's not care. That's deception. She submitted the timeline, the Facebook comments, the notary inconsistencies, and even brought in a forensic handwriting expert who testified that the signature on the authorization form bore key differences from mind slant, pressure, formation. This is not a match, the expert concluded. Then Tara called me to the stand. I hadn't planned to speak. I thought I'd be too emotional. But when I sat in that chair, I felt something settle inside me like I'd finally taken my seat at a table I'd been shut out of for too long. I didn't ask my daughter to sell my house, I began. Yes, I've said it was a lot to manage, but never not unseated I say I wanted it gone. I would have downsized on my own terms. I would have made a plan. But she made the decision for me. She used my signature. She emptied my home. And she did it while I was somewhere with no phone, no internet, no warning. I paused, breathing through the lump in my throat. This wasn't love. This wasn't care. It was control. And I may be older, but I'm not invisible. I'm not voiceless. And I won't be erased from my own life. The courtroom was silent. When I stepped down, I didn't look at Heather. I didn't need to. The judge recessed for lunch, and I walked out into the hallway, head spinning. That's when I heard a voice behind me. Linda. I turned. It was Heather. Her face was tight, like she was holding back a storm of emotion. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Why are you trying to ruin me? I stared at her. Ruin you? Heather, you already ruined what we had. You broke the one bond I thought was unshakable, and now you want to blame me for defending myself? She looked away, lips trembling. I was trying to help. No, I said. You were trying to control, and now, for once, you don't get to. She turned and walked away, and I stood there, breathing, shaking, but not backing down. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a woman reclaiming her voice. The judge returned after lunch, his expression unreadable as he flipped through his notes. I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on me. Tara sat poised, hands clasped neatly on the table, while Heather tapped one perfectly manicured nail against her water bottle. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. This court, the judge began, finds that the sale of the property in question was conducted under highly questionable circumstances. Evidence strongly suggests that the signature used to authorize the sale was forged. The timeline indicates a deliberate attempt to conceal the transaction while the plaintiff was out of communication. He paused. Therefore, I am issuing an immediate injunction on the sale. The current occupants will be served with notice, and, pending further investigation, the transfer of deed is suspended. A wave of relief swept over me, but it was tangled with something else. Grief. Not for the house, but for the daughter I thought I knew. Heather stood abruptly. "You're siding with her?" she snapped. "She's manipulating everyone with this sob story. I was protecting Herdo. You know what it's like to have a mother who refuses help, who clings to the past like it's sacred?" Her voice rose in pitch. The judge raised a hand. "Miss Langley, this is not the time for outbursts." But she wasn't done. "She kept that house like a shrine, to my dad, to her glory days. It's like she froze in time. I tried to get her to declutter, to sell, but she wouldn't budge. So, yes, I took action. Because watching her sink into that place was like watching someone die in slow motion." The courtroom murmured. I didn't flinch. I stood slowly and said, "You know what hurts the most, Heather? Not the lie, not even the betrayal. It's that you saw my love for that home as a sickness." She turned her face away, jaw clenched. The judge called for order and scheduled a final hearing to rule on damages. The case was far from over, but for now, the house was safe. As I walked out of the courtroom, reporters had gathered. Apparently, someone had tipped off the local news about the Cassia daughter accused of selling her mother's home while she was at a spa. It made for a juicy headline. I kept my head down, but one reporter called out, "Miss Langley, do you have any message for other seniors who might be at risk of this kind of thing?" I stopped. "Yes," I said, turning to face the cameras. "You are not a burden. You are not disposable. And if someone treats you like your life doesn't belong to you anymore, fight. You have every right to live on your terms." That night, back in my temporary apartment, I watched the segment air. My name, my face, my story. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel ashamed. I felt seen. A few days after the news segment aired, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I got dozens of messages, some from old friends, some from strangers. Women from across the country reached out. One wrote, "Thank you for speaking up. My daughter tricked me into signing over my car. I thought I was alone." Another said, "You reminded me that my life still matters, that I don't have to just disappear." Their words humbled me, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like some old woman lost in the margins. But while the public seemed to rally behind me, Heather took a different path. I found out through a mutual friend that she had gone on a local morning show, apparently trying to salvage her reputation. "It wasn't theft," she told the host. "It was a misunderstood act of love. I was trying to help my mother transition into a safer, more modern life. She doesn't see how dangerous it is for someone her age to live alone in a big house." The host nodded sympathetically, but I could see it in her eyes doubt, even through the television screen. Heather looked polished, calm, controlled. But she didn't fool me. She was spinning a narrative to protect herself, not to make amends. Tara called me right after. "Did you see it?" she asked. "She's trying to gaslight the entire city." I laughed bitterly. "She's good at that. Always has been." But then Tara's voice softened. "There's something else. You got a letter." "A letter?" "Yeah. From a man named Thomas." My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard that name in almost 30 years. Thomas was my brother. We'd been close once, as kids, but after our mother died, a disagreement over the will tore us apart. He accused me of keeping too much. I accused him of abandoning me when I needed him most. We hadn't spoken since. I opened it, Tara admitted. I hope that's okay. He says he saw the news. He says he wants to reconnect. I didn't answer. I just stared at the wall for a long time, heart racing. The past has a way of creeping back in when you least expect it. That night, I sat with the letter. It was handwritten, just like the one from Linda, but this one didn't feel cold or rehearsed. It read, Dear Emma, I don't know if you'll even read this, but I saw you on the news and I recognized your voice immediately. I'm sorry for what Heather did, and I'm sorry for what I did. For not being there when Dad died, for not coming to Mom's funeral, for staying angry too long. If you're open to it, I'd love to talk. No pressure. Just two old souls catching up. Your brother, Thomas. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up the phone. I met Thomas at a small diner halfway between our town's neutral ground. I hadn't seen him in nearly 30 years, but the moment he walked through the door, I knew it was him. A little more gray, a little more hunched in the shoulders, but the same eyes, the same awkward smile he used to flash when he didn't know what to say. He stood there, holding his baseball cap in both hands, like a schoolboy about to apologize to the principal. I got up and gave him a hug. It was stiff at first, then warmer than I expected. We sat. The conversation started slow. Weather, traffic, the pie we both ordered. Then he cleared his throat. I didn't come here just because of the news story, Em. I came because I realized time doesn't owe us anything. I nodded. It took me losing a home to remember that. He looked down at his coffee. I've missed a lot. Birthdays, Christmas. I was angry, and I let it sit too long. You ever do that? Let something fester until it just owns you? I thought of Heather all the time, I said. He told me about his divorce, his grandkids, the little antique shop he ran with his second wife before she passed. And I told him about the house, about how I had decorated every corner of it with love, only for it to be stripped away like it meant nothing. He didn't try to fix it. He just listened. And that meant everything. When we stood to leave, he pulled something from his coat pocket. It was a tiny photo as kids, sitting on the porch of our childhood home, holding popsicles and grinning with missing teeth. I found this after Mom passed. Couldn't bring myself to send it. Thought maybe you'd throw it away. I held it gently. It smelled, faintly, of cedar and old paper. I didn't speak. I just hugged him again, tighter this time. On the drive home, I felt something I hadn't in months, a sense of belonging, not because of a house, not because of a title, but because someone remembered who I was and still wanted to know me. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer. There's been a development, she said. My heart skipped. Good or bad? Unclear, she said. Heather's team has proposed a settlement. Quiet, no press. They're offering you a cash sum in exchange for dropping all legal action and for signing a non-disclosure agreement. I felt cold. An NDA? They wanted to buy my silence. I sat in my kitchen staring at the phone for over an hour, replaying my lawyer's words in my head. They were offering money, but not as an apology, as a muzzle. The settlement amount was significant. Enough to buy a small condo outright. Enough to live comfortably for years. Enough to never have to hear Heather's name again. But the NDA, that meant silence. That meant pretending none of this ever happened. That meant letting her rewrite the story her version, with me as the confused, unstable mother who overreacted. Accepting meant giving her exactly what she'd counted on, my shame. I called Judy. What would you do? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Take the money if you want the money, but don't you dare take their version of the truth. Then I called Elaine. You can't be bought, she said softly. Not your story, not your dignity. If you sign that paper, you're telling every woman out there that it's okay to be erased as long as the check clears. Still, I wrestled with it. That house was never coming back. My daughter had burned a bridge that couldn't be rebuilt. And I was tired of fighting, tired of waking up every morning with this storm still raging in my chest. But then I remembered the article, the letters, the hundreds of women who had written me to say, this happened to me too. Their pain was still out there, unspoken, invisible, just like mine had been. So I made my decision. The next day, I walked into my lawyer's office, sat down, and said, we're not taking the deal. She blinked. Are you sure, Emma? That's a lot of money to walk away from. I'm sure, I said. This story isn't over. Not yet. She nodded slowly. Then we'll go public. All the way. And that's exactly what we did. The piece ran on 3 major online outlets by the end of the week. My face wasn't in the photos, but my words were raw, honest, real. I told everything. The voucher, the staged kindness, the betrayal, the legal fight. I didn't name Heather. I didn't have to. The people who needed to know already knew. Within days, my inbox exploded again. Women from Georgia, Maine, Utah, even Alaska, all sharing their versions of what I now called quiet theft. When family steals not your money, but your place in their lives, your memories, your worth. One message stood out. It was from a 40-something woman named Rachel. She wrote, I'm Heather, or I was. I took my mother's house. I justified it the same way. I told myself she was forgetful, too old to handle it. I never realized what I was doing until it was too late. I tried to apologize, but she never answered my calls. Your story is her voice. Thank you. I cried reading that one, not because it made things right, but because it reminded me that even silence echoes somewhere. That week, a producer from a national morning show reached out. They wanted to do a segment. Mothers erased the quiet epidemic of family betrayal. They wanted me on it. I wasn't sure I had it in me to sit in front of a camera, but something inside me said, if you stay quiet now, you'll never speak again. The studio lights were blinding. I sat in the makeup chair, trying not to fidget, my hands folded tightly in my lap. A young assistant dabbed powder on my face while chatting about the weather in a tone far too cheerful for the occasion. Across the room, a producer held up a clipboard and mouthed, 5 minutes. I was about to tell the entire country how my daughter sold my house behind my back. The interviewer was kind mid-40s, polished, empathetic in that way only seasoned anchors can be. She started soft. Emma, thank you for being here. How are you feeling? I answered truthfully. Nervous, exposed, but also ready. We talked for 20 minutes, though it felt like 5. I told my story the way it happened, not the way I wished it had. I didn't sugarcoat Heather's actions, but I didn't vilify her either. I spoke about the heartbreak, the disbelief, the loneliness of being betrayed by your own child. And I spoke about the thousands of women who had reached out to me since. Women who had been used, discarded, gaslit, and left in silence. The anchor closed the segment with a question. If your daughter's watching this right now, is there anything you'd like to say? I paused. My throat tightened, but I nodded. Yes, I'd say I miss the girl who used to curl up next to me on the couch and fall asleep with her head on my shoulder. I miss being her safe place, but I won't miss myself to make you feel better. Not anymore. That clip aired the next morning, and it changed everything. Within days, more media reached out, podcasts, blogs, even a documentary team. But more importantly, women like me kept speaking up. There were online groups now, support circles, even legal aid initiatives for elderly people exploited by their own families. I wasn't the only one anymore. And one afternoon, about 3 weeks after the interview aired, I received a letter in the mail, no return address, just my name written in Heather's careful cursive. Inside was a single page. Mom, I saw the segment. I heard you. I don't know how to fix what I did or if it can be fixed, but I hope someday you'll believe that I'm not proud of who I became. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. Just, I'm sorry. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to respond, not yet, maybe never, but I was ready to breathe again. Now I live in a small but beautiful apartment by the water. I grow tomatoes on my balcony and host a book club every Thursday night. I laugh louder, sleep deeper, and when people ask if I have children, I say yes, but not like I used to. Because I've learned that being a mother doesn't mean disappearing for your children. It doesn't mean accepting disrespect in exchange for love. Sometimes it means standing tall in your own name, reclaiming your voice, and teaching by example, even if the lesson is painful. So if this story resonated with you, I want you to hear me now. You are not invisible. You are not too old to matter. You are not crazy. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. And if someone has tried to erase, you know this. You are still here, still strong, still worthy, and your story, it's just beginning. If you've made it this far, thank you. Please subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories like mine, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's remind the world that no one gets to silence us anymore. We speak, and we're not done yet.